Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Non-Obvious Beyond Diversity Summit. I am your host, Courtney Craven. I am the founder and editor-in-chief of CanIPlayThat.com, and I am joined today by Melissa Boone of Microsoft, Kishana Gray of University of Illinois at Chicago, and Kate Sanchez from But Why Though is going to be joining us a little bit later. She is caught up doing some life things, so welcome, everybody. It's wonderful to be here with you. I'm excited to talk to you all about how gaming communities can inform the rest of the world about how to create inclusive communities, diverse communities, how we keep each other safe, and we're going to have a great discussion. So let's get started. We want to talk a little bit about our backgrounds and what makes gaming communities unique. I know from my own perspective, having built a community of disabled gamers, we've really had to work to support each other because, you know, it started as a small community and we've grown, and you have to put up with that toxicity from the rest of the world, right? So you have to do a lot of work behind the scenes that nobody ever sees, nobody talks about, to protect each other and make sure that everybody in your community stays safe. So I want to talk about how we can take some of the work we do there and apply it more broadly to our communities, to our workplaces, and give people something that they can really do to improve in that aspect.
Fantastic. I'm Kishana Gray, assistant professor at the University of Illinois at Chicago. I think I guess the corner of the gaming world that I've kind of, I don't want to say built because I don't want to say anything like that, but it's really just building bridges really between like industry and academia, and also like elevating like a lot of the critical scholarship in gaming, especially in academic spaces. Because I know like a lot of scholars like me, you know, women, people of color, it's been hard, you know, for us to get like a lot of the research that we're doing, first to get it published, you know, to get visibility for it, to get people to take it seriously. You know, I even have my own like colleagues even often, you know, express that like when you study video games, it's like kids play. So like I'm really at like, you know, those just basic kinds of conversations, just trying to get folks to take, you know, gaming scholarship and these critical issues, you know, that we're doing like seriously. But I would also say like, you know, piggyback off of, you know, Melissa Boone's, you know, kind of work, you know, focus like on race and gender, sexuality, ability, and I've tried to just, you know, elevate, you know, different perspectives in those world, you know, so people can know like what the realities are, what the experiences are. You know, it's not just all doom and gloom. You know, these are beautiful leisure recreational spaces that we thrive, and our communities thrive in these spaces. But, you know, there are some challenges as well. You know, so I just want to elevate, you know, the perspectives, especially of the people who are in these online communities, just elevate their perspectives and allow to so they can be visible, you know, to the stakeholders in the space, to industry, but also just so academic researchers can take, you know, this scholarship seriously as well.
And hey, I'm Melissa Boone. I'm a senior research manager on the Xbox research and design team at Microsoft. And so there's lots of different ways that I think about the gaming communities that I'm in. So I think about just playing games as a gamer, as a Black queer gamer, as a woman. One of the things that we've been really big at and for inclusive spaces is just connecting with each other across space and time. If you're in a particular location, you might not know physically anybody in that geographic region who shares your same identities and also plays games. So we've been connecting over the internet and connecting in virtual spaces for a really long time and finding each other there. And that's that proactivity of like reaching out and saying like, hey, can I find a space where other people are like me, where they speak my language, where they understand my culture? Making that active step to kind of find and make those communities thrive is something that I feel like is really baked into the experience of folks who don't often find other people in their geographic regions that they can talk to. And especially within the gaming industry, being a minority and a minority in many different intersectional ways, I've actually done some work building communities within Xbox and within the industry for developers of color and women in the industry and queer folks in the industry. And that is just like, you need a family and a language and a culture that you can speak amongst yourselves. The Blacks at Xbox community feels like a family. We call each other a family. We hang out together. And it's just like, it's a refuge. It's a place where you can go lean on folks. We have a lot of fun. We play games. We watch movies. We do all kinds of things together. But really that strength comes from within the community, from leaning on other people and learning to rely on them and really spreading that burden out so that we're kind of all carrying it together.
And that's what the communities are all about. We support each other. And for me, one of the best parts of doing what I do at Can I Play That, outside of just getting to know other gamers that are similar to me, has been being able to connect with other communities. I know Kate and we connected because we had to address a common problem that we were both dealing with, and from that we kind of learned, okay, well, if we can talk this way and we can solve this problem between the two of us, we need to be doing more and supporting each other more in terms of, how can I make this site that I love have the same success that my site has, or bring new audiences to these perspectives. And Kishana, your book, your wonderful book, that was another thing that was really eye-opening for me, because you can know that these spaces exist, but if you're not necessarily a part of them, you don't know the beauty of the stories, the importance of the stories. And that was one of the things, especially reading the chapter that you did about accessibility, that I work in accessibility, that's my life, and I still learn from it because it was an experience outside of my own. So just being able to listen to other people and learn, just how are you experiencing this? It's such an exciting thing to do. And I think that that's what makes gaming unique, because we do connect totally online. So we're not limited by who am I in proximity to, and that's kind of really helped us to thrive during the pandemic too, because everybody's, well, how do we connect? Well, we've been connected, so how do you guys think that we could model connection virtually, because we excel at it, to help other people have the lives and the fulfillment from virtual connections that we do?
So one thing, first I want to say, I also want to give a shout out to Kishana's books. I actually discovered your first one, Race, Gender, and Deviance, and Xbox Live, when I first started at Xbox, and I was like, oh my gosh, somebody's writing about race on Xbox Live. I feel seen. So that just made me feel super excited, and then I tried to make everybody on my team read it as well. But in thinking about how we can kind of port some of the stuff we know, I think one of the things that really catches me about pandemic interactions is that everybody immediately went to video calls as like the way to talk to each other. It's like, let's all do video calls. But in gaming communities, we interact in so many different ways. There's text, like we use text messages to talk to each other. There's Discord chats. We can have live chats, or we can have asynchronous ones. There's been voice calls. There's been, email, even things like Reddit threads and things like that. There's lots of different modalities that people like to interact in. I tend to be a little bit more introverted, and so I tend to prefer the text, the asynchronous. I can think, I can prepare. And so I do know, for me, video calls are like super exhausting. But one of the things I love about my gaming communities is that no matter what level of energy I have for a particular day, I can jump right in and interact in a way that makes me feel good. I can either use text and just kind of go until I don't feel like going anymore. I can jump into a video call with people, or I can jump on the mic with other people and play games. Like, there's something to actually do during that time that we're talking to each other. So I think like embracing the many different ways that gamers connect with each other, and especially when you start thinking about like ability and the intersections there, and like making sure that your communications are accessible and all of the different things we think about for that. I think if we brought more of that to thinking about connecting with the pandemic, that could be an instructive lesson for people. So there's lots of different ways to connect. It doesn't have to be over video call.
I love that you brought those points up, Melissa. I'm sitting here thinking about, early on in the pandemic, when a lot of folks are trying, especially academics, are trying to think about how to connect and how to do this. Gamers were at the forefront of trying to, help people figure out, okay, this is how you connect with one another. And so I know I always had people reaching out via email trying to say, hey, we want to do this video thing. What should we do? And I was like, you can have your whole class on Twitch. You can interact. You don't have to use Zoom or WebEx, because it's so many other, different modalities, that you can use. But I think it also, just when you were calling each of those things off, I think something that we have, as an academic, I don't think we've really done enough history of like the technologies of gaming technologies, right? Just seeing how innovative all these like technologies like have been, just from text-based communities, then moving to audio-based communities, and then we see each other now in live streaming, and just how all of them kind of like mix and meld like together. I think that was like some of the purpose of like intersectional tech. The book, I know this isn't like a platform for me to shout out my book, but I'm gonna do it anyway. But I really wanted to just like illustrate, just as I use intersectional to also think about like intersectional bodies, the experiences at the intersection, but also how all these technologies like intersect to work to for each other to sustain identities and to sustain communities that a lot of folks are like interacting in. It's because we have our cell phones, and because I have the app, like the Xbox app in my phone, like just lets me know, okay, am I gonna jump on the game? Well, let me go see who's online, and I can just look and see what people are doing. Like, it's been amazing. And I'm even thinking about the glass. I know Melissa can speak more to like the technologies, but like Xbox has just given us like so many like technologies that it came and then it left, or it faded like from existence, but they were so profound. Even in the book, there's like a shout out to Zune in the book. Nobody talks about Zune anymore. Like, I miss my Zune, but that like the technologies that I really feel like gamers are a lot of times like at the forefront of like a lot of these innovative like technologies, because they're maybe, I don't know if they feel comfortable enough maybe to try things out and like just to see if it works for them and to adopt them, but I really think that, gamers just have, that they aren't as stressed about, like a lot of these technologies, but really, really fortunate to have a lot of these things for our connectivity.
So you both talked about communication, and that is another area that I think we really excel as gamers in being inclusive. I've noticed particularly, like Melissa said, video calls are just, I'm hard of hearing, so I have to like do that active listening constantly to stay caught up with what's going on. And auto captions are horrible and not really reliable. So as gamers, we've had to kind of scramble together our own ways to communicate with each other, because we can't texting somebody while you're trying to play Call of Duty. You're gonna die if you that's not gonna go well.
That was the reason why people didn't file complaints early on in Xbox Live. Like, if somebody called them like the N-word or something, they said, I'm not going to stop my game to go and find the feature to submit a complaint. And that's one of the things, that we'll get to that later, but, I try to like advocate to get like more user-friendly kind of ways to like file like complaints and stuff. I'm sorry, Court, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, that's all right. No, you're good. But being inclusive in our approaches to conversation is such a big thing in the gaming community, especially within the community of Can I Play That? Because we all have different disabilities in the community, and what works for me isn't going to work for someone else. So we have to be super, super flexible in how we're willing to communicate. And I have not seen a group of people more embracing of that flexibility than gamers. And I think that is really a testament to what people can be when we talk about being inclusive, especially with how we communicate with each other, because in games, there's not really that one ideal way to communicate with anybody, So yeah.
I can comment to that. I didn't know if you wanted me to
go ahead.
Like comment on that. I think a lot of it may because whenever I talk to my colleagues about all these things that like I'm doing, they just had like this one assumption of like what gaming was. And I think this has been like really been like a great time, to really like tell them about all of the amazing things that like gaming can afford, right? In their mind, they were like, wait a minute, it's not just kids in there, just throwing a ball off the wall. I think they were referencing like Pong, like somebody actually said that, like a ball off the wall. I'm like, no. Let me show you what gaming looks like now. Like, this is like, I said, just imagine that generation that, the generation that grew up like with games, the games came into their homes and then they grew up and games grew up with them. And they, are a part of this, making sure that, that the culture, like spread and it continued to grow and continue to like develop, so they were really like so many people. Like, I guess I'm shocked at how shocked that people are like that games are not just like a kid's activity and just like a kid's thing to do, I don't know how to get beyond that, because I feel like that's where I'm limited at in elevating like some of these conversations, because I have to like explain to them like basic things about like controllers and consoles and the difference between console gaming and PC gaming and streaming and esports. Like, and it seems like that the conversation like never gets anywhere. I would really like for you all, if you all could like speak, because I would love like advice, especially like Melissa. Well, Melissa, you're in like a different setting because gaming matters like in your world already. But how can we get it to like matter and just go beyond basic conversations? Because I can't even like elevate the conversation to talk about like issues around like gender and race when I'm just trying to give people like the basics. 1, 2, 3. This is what gaming is.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I think we can do better, just as an industry and as a community, is getting people in. Starting in gaming in general, especially in 2021, can be really difficult. I mean, even just I was teaching my father-in-law how to play Assassin's Creed Valhalla over the holiday break, and even just getting the dual analog sticks right was a big deal for him. Like that was hard. So I think that there is more that we can do there. But one of the things that I try to do is thread them together. So I try to take that the personal is political like really seriously. And as I'm starting to teach people the basics of gaming and the introduction, also teaching them a little bit about how I got into it and why that's important. So, for example,
Melissa, I don't want to lose anything that you're saying. Yeah, I want to make sure you're
having a hard time hearing. Okay, perfect.
That's perfect.
So as I'm teaching people intro stuff, I try to thread in some background stuff or tell them things that they might not have known about women gamers or gamers of color or anything like that. So I tell people all the time, like, we're really big in the fighting game community. Even though I don't really play fighting games anymore, that's how I got started, was playing with all my cousins in the basement. I talk a little bit about how gaming changes the way that I approach and come in, even just talking to people about what communities to join. So I try to weave that narrative and use my own personal experiences as a way to give people examples of this is how gaming is affected by identity and by intersections and by community.
Yeah, I've had especially recently a lot of conversations with people who know nothing about games, and I haven't played since Pong or Pac-Man, and it's a friend of mine was researching an article to write for the New York Times about how games can benefit kids during a pandemic, and specifically disabled kids. And she was just astounded to learn all, there's the stereotypes of games and the stereotype of the teenage angry gamer, and that very much exists. It's something that we've all had to put up with. But it was amazing to see like how her eyes opened and she just realized that there's so much, games can help you be a better fiction writer. If that's, I write fiction, and playing games has helped me study narrative and story arcs, character design. There's just so much more than just, it being a silly hobby that people waste time on. And it's exciting to see people have that, even if they don't go on to become gamers themselves, they know after that conversation, So let's move on to a problem in gaming, which is inclusion, which is a problem everywhere, but it's a special kind of problem in gaming because it's two-faced, right? Or two-sided. There's an inclusion problem in the industry where there's not. Gaming is very straight white male. And gaming communities are not really straight white male, but they're the prominent figures that people see as the gaming community. And we've all had to do work to demand ourselves be heard, right? So I want to talk a little bit about how we have, in our own ways, addressed that problem to be heard, to be seen, and taken seriously in the ways we interact in the gaming communities.
That's a fantastic question. I'm so sorry, Melissa. Go
No,
ahead.
go
I
ahead,
think you were-
Kashana.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
That's a fantastic question. Thank you for asking that. I think, and again, I'm gonna speak like in like an academic sense. I think I spoke earlier about how a lot of folks didn't take a lot of the scholarship and this research seriously, and I think what I have had to do is really like transform like the ways that I like put research out. Right, I had to do a lot more like public facing, external facing, as opposed to just like the internal things. Right, as opposed to just like writing books and doing like articles and stuff, like because this is all fine, but I have to think about who's the audience that I'm reaching, right? And I always have to ask myself like the question, who do I want to like engage with this work? What kind of connections am I trying to build? What kind of conversations am I trying to like facilitate? And so then I had to like think, well, I'm not going to reach those folks by some paywall journal article that's housed in a university library, right? So I had to really like adopt like a lot more like public scholarship. So I started participating a lot more like with like podcasts. So I was a part of the Not Your Mama's Gamer podcast, the Samantha Blackman, I founded and directs. And so, that gave like a lot of visibility to a lot of my work, because, it was like podcasts and it was part, like a blog. And that really got me really engaged in, like, for instance, breaking down like these big theoretical academic parts. Like, don't nobody want to hear about no theories and methodologies. Don't nobody want to hear that, right? And that's not transformative. Like that ain't gonna start the revolution, So I had to really figure out, the ways that I could just, get the information out to the people. But, I had to do these things to keep my job, right? And to get tenure and all that stuff. And so, and I felt like that it's been like a lot of, I don't want to say like a lot of work. I don't want to sound like some privileged professor, I was like, oh, this is so much work, but it is, really trying to make myself legible and make this like work legible, like to different kinds of audiences. That has really like, I think been like the biggest challenge, but it's been rewarding and it has paid off. And I think also making connections with, folks like Melissa and Blacks in Xbox, having connections to like different people, so we can figure out, okay, these are the conversations y'all are having. This is what you're doing. This is what I'm doing. So how can we, like combine forces and, Voltron this thing, really like, maximize like, our energies and our efforts, because we are really, we're having the same conversations. We have the same goals. We have the same end game, that we want, the spaces to be better for everybody, that's playing in that space. Hey, Kate, I got really excited seeing you, Kate.
Let's introduce Kate. Hi.
Hi. Sorry, I'm so late. I had a fire at work.
Kate is from the amazing website But Why Though. They are a community for marginalized gamers and geek culture. That's not something I'm familiar with, so I know I'm going to butcher it. But hey, tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself.
So I'm Kate Sanchez. In my real life, I've been a diversity and inclusion professional for the last 6 years. And we really focus at But Why Though, when I began the site, to make sure that we're uplifting marginalized voices in the entertainment space. So we're building a community that isn't just diverse, but also inclusive, to make sure that everybody feels okay sharing their voice, both in gaming, in through interviews, reviews, recaps, and any other sort of pop culture media as well. And that was really important to me, because when I entered the space and I started doing conventions and reporting on things and reviewing, it was really isolating, because I realized that there weren't a lot of people who looked like me reporting on these things, engaging in these things, or being given the opportunities to do that. And so when we created But Why Though, we did so with the focus of making sure that we were going to become a platform that gave people that space to reach out to others, to share their experiences, and ultimately find a community where they felt comfortable sharing all of that.
Awesome. So we're talking a little bit about the inclusion problem in gaming and the different obstacles that we face. Talk a little bit about some of the barriers that you've faced doing your work and the work you've had to do to overcome them. I know you recently have tweeted about getting, I can't think of a word, previews of movies and access to film festivals and stuff. Talk a little bit about what you've had to do to make sure that your voice is heard, to make sure that you're seen in that space.
Yeah, access is a huge problem. And actually, that was the first, when I tweeted about that happening in film, that was one of the first times that it happened in film to me. to be honest, gaming is the hardest to gain access for anything, because it is all about who you know. And I don't know a lot of people who look like me that have access. And a lot of the time, ultimately, when we're talking about access, their companies are giving access to the Kotaku, to the Polygon, to the IGN, and a lot of sites that have built up around creating a space for marginalized folks get left to the wayside. And a lot of the times, too, we don't even know what door we can go stand in front of and knock. All of that stuff is kept personal, and any access that I've gotten, thankfully, has actually been from other people of color in the space who have been like, I see the work you're doing, I see the work that Bitwido is doing, you deserve to be here. But that puts an undue burden not only on my journalists or my site, it also puts it on the brown and black folks who are in the industry to then have to be the person, when that's not even their job, to go and find a space for us. And I'm thankful for them. And I try to make sure that I share anything that I have with other people. But the fact that I can't even just get in front of a door at a AAA, at any sort of studio for any hardware, it's rough. Especially when I know that our site and our community has the metrics to put it. I don't know where to put up a giant sign to see if I can get access. And that's been the hard thing. And it really shouldn't fall on like a game developer who is also marginalized doing whatever they can to find me a PR contact, and then them talking to the PR person and then hopefully getting me in. Like, that's a lot of work that they shouldn't have to do. And ultimately, what is hard for me about the games industry is that it is so small that it should be easier to give people access than it is. Because I run point on communicating with comic companies, with communicating with film studios and their PR, and it has never been as hard as it is to get somebody to talk to you at a large company, and that's the problem. Yeah, I hope that answered the question. I have a lot of feelings on it. I'm very frustrated. You can't tell.
I think that's the perfect time to move into the solution. And Melissa, you made such an important point in our show notes about explicitly asking people in marginalized communities specifically what you need to know to work with us. So I want to talk a little bit about what the solution to all this is. With Can I Play That Work, we've been very lucky because accessibility is kind of the it thing in games right now. So we've been on fire for like a year, but it's still been super hard to get the big places, not game studios really, because game studios, they want to make a better product. They want to learn from us, and they've realized that, okay, if you want to make a better product, there's nobody better to talk to than the people that need you to make that better product. So the solution is reaching out of your network and talking to people. And I one of the things I struggle with is, how do you make people understand that? Like, a lot of gaming seems to be who you know. Well, I know a guy, so I'm going to talk to them. How do we move beyond that problem?
Yeah, this is something that I spend a lot of my time thinking about, because it's a mental I've taken on for myself with an Xbox. It's just part of my job. It's part of my being, so I made it part of my job. And that's one of the things that I love to do, is connect the folks within Xbox and within the industry with the beautiful communities that I'm a member of or that I've seen, that do need that voice within. One of the ways that I use to try to convince people about it is showing them that empathy and doing some empathy building. Like, we've done a lot of different workshops within Xbox. We've actually brought members of the community in to speak to our developers and other folks within Xbox. And lots of communities that they might not have heard of or heard from before, or even knew could play games or played or engaged in gaming. And actually just getting that empathy building is honestly one of the biggest tools that I have, because people always think that they're a lot more different from people who are different from them on face than they actually are. But when they come in and we just talk about games, that's like our unifier. So they're like, oh my gosh, they play games just like I do. Like they're just as into, Overwatch or Call of Duty or Halo or whatever it is that I play as I am. And so that connection begins to form. And then as people hear about the barriers that they have unintentionally set up over the years for folks, they just start to feel like, oh my gosh, because developers come into this industry because they want people to play their games. And I'm not saying that there aren't some folks who just don't want to pay attention to, inclusion. I'm not trying to like talk about that rainbow connection, but for the most part, when I talk to developers, there's a lot of ignorance. There's a lot more ignorance that I would have expected before I came into the industry. It feels like we've been talking and thinking about these things for so long that we assume that everybody else kind of knows about them. And so that's why I've kind of made it my mission to be that bridge, to bring in some of the academic and theory work that's been done and said, hey, have you heard about this? To bring in the work from Can I Play That? I spread that website all across Xbox all the time. I cite it all the time for folks because I'm like, these communities have been telling us what they need and how they play games for literal years. Like all we have to do is listen. A lot of the legwork has been done for us. So it is exhausting, it is tiring, but it's so incredibly rewarding. And like, I find it such a privilege to be able to do that and have that role in my community and my company to actually do that.
I think it was beautiful points that you made, Melissa. And I think that, you are in an industry that I think there's no malintention, right? They don't mean to do these things and to have like these missteps and to put these barriers up. That was something that I think was really shocking when I learned, and having like conversations about like different kinds of like representations and depictions, like, with a lot of designers, And then one of the things that I thought was like really, really beautiful to learn from a lot of these folks is that a lot of these developers and designers want to push the boundaries, want to like, do a lot of these creative, innovative, diverse kinds of things. And then it's like just the higher ups, like the marketing folks are like, I can't sell this. I'm not going to be able to sell, your queer gamer in a wheelchair. I can't sell, you know what I'm saying? Like they are limited by, what the industry, has like, envisioned. Right. And I think like in an academic like setting, I think, whereas like in the industry, there's no malintention. I don't know what to say about academia. Academia is a very conservative place still. And I think that's one of the things that was so shocking for me to like realize, people always say that, like these institutions of higher learning are just bastions of like liberal thinking and they're not.
No.
Right? Okay,
no, I left. So I actually left my PhD program because of sexism and racism in my department that I reported. And nothing ever got done about. And now I do D&I work and I run my site instead of having a PhD. But that was a shock for me too, is like, I did realize that if I could get in front of the door, I could actually I know that we have the merit to get in through the door and I can prove what we can do. But it was just finding the door that was a problem. But it was really interesting. I'd meet devs and they're like, oh my God, you didn't have access to my game. Let me get on it and get that for you. And it was weird because it definitely, it feels more blind spot than intentional a lot of the time. And it's kind of like, I don't know, it's hopeful to me. It kind of lets me know that there is a solution to this.
Yeah. So because this event is beyond diversity, we're taking things beyond just talking about them. What are some actionable items that people can take and apply to their lives from our experiences and our work? And I want to talk about the biggest mistake I made with Can I Play That? And I didn't even know it was a problem, and that's absolutely my white privilege speaking. I have my handy books here so I can show off everybody's book. I read this. And there was a chapter in it about not being aware that diverse people are not going to just come to you. So I launched Can I Play That? My partner and I launched Can I Play That with just the two of us, no money. You know, we had a grand vision, and we didn't do the work to reach out to people that didn't look like us or that didn't have our lived experiences as white and Turkish European gamers. And so we have this huge platform now, and we've kind of done the opposite of our intent in giving the microphone to all disabled gamers, because the only thing that we've written on and featured and made, you know, normalized is the white disabled experience. And it never occurred to me that the reason we weren't getting people of color submitting to us was because I had created a platform that didn't really seem welcoming to them. So for me, the actionable item that I think everyone needs to do better at, and at first admit to themselves that you made a mistake, that you didn't know about that, you know, and we need to look for experiences beyond our own, and realize that, you know what, people aren't just going to come to me. I need to do that work. Instead of putting the work on marginalized people, we all need to be doing the work to connect and boost people with experiences outside of our own.
Yeah, my takeaway kind of piggybacks a lot off of Courtney's, but extends. So there's definitely you have to do the work to reach out to the communities. But to me, there's kind of a step process to this, right? So the first thing is the internet is a beautiful thing. People from marginalized communities have been writing about their experiences for years. So the first thing to do is do a little bit of pre-work, get some background knowledge to it. I mean, just searching, when I first started working in accessibility and gaming, just searching for disability in gaming or accessibility in gaming gave me a wealth of information at my fingertips to at least get me started. And that's how I found Can I Play That, right? So you have to do that work. And then when you do reach out to the community to push it further, when you've kind of hit your mark, doubling down on that comment that Courtney brought up earlier about, you know, be explicit about what it is that you want. Like, it is okay to tell a community of Black women gamers, I want to know more about what the experience of being a Black woman gamer is like and how it affects gaming, because I want to make my product more diverse. Or I want to make my game more inclusive. You can be explicit with communities. Now, you do have to show that you're willing to do the work. Again, that's where that pre-work comes in. You know, make sure that you see that through, make sure that you exhibit that knowledge to people so that they know you're not just coming in straight from 101 and haven't done any of your own research. But if you come in with that humility and you've done that pre-work and you're explicit and honest about what you want, lots of people are going to want to come in and fill that gap, because we want more inclusive games too, right? We want games that feel like they're made for us. So don't feel like you can't come straight to us and just say what you want and be explicit about that. Just be willing to do the work and be willing to listen and hear about what you might have done wrong and be ready to fix it.
Yeah.
I think do we have time? A short comment. I know I'm thinking about in an academic context, you know, because like I said, we have a lot of folks, you know, as Kate mentioned, there's a lot of folks that are like base level, like below the basement, you know, they're understanding the bar is super low. And so what I have just resigned to accept, you know, from academic institutions is just like, give me money. Yep. Give me the resources to be able to do the work that I'm doing, because especially with all the shoddy D&I, you know, diversity and inclusion, you know, all their, you know, the symbolic kind of gestures where they're not really doing anything. I'm like, but at least give the people the money and the resources and the infrastructure to be able to build and do things, especially if you're not going to do anything. You know, because we keep getting embarrassed by these institutions who are doing like all these things and it's like meaningless. Like it means nothing. Like, you know, so just give us the money to be able to do the work and to be able to build it and to support students and faculty and staff and support the research and to start to bridge and make the connections with industries, you know. So, you know, I'd like to be able to pay, you know, like Melissa money, like to come in and, you know, help us like understand, you know, to give, you know, CIPT in court, you know, like give y'all like money and stuff like to be able to do some of these things, you know. So institutions have a lot of money. So that's what I'm working on. Like, just give me the money. Yeah.
I think for me, from a perspective of like what I would like to see people do more of is, I can't tell you how many times I have gotten the same copy and paste. We can't work with you right now. We'd love to work with you in the future. No information, no context. And like, I understand, because I understand crafting that to everything is hard, But especially when you're working with marginalized folks, like the first thing I did was I reached out to somebody, and one of the first times that I got denied, I then looked at people that were partnered with that company. I looked at their numbers, I pulled their metrics, and I saw that our site was actually higher in all across the board, and I didn't know why I wasn't worked with. So being a brown woman leading a site with majority BIPOC, I was like, okay, this feels weird. But what would have curtailed that and what would have kept my mind from spinning and automatically going negative is if I had just been told these were the metrics that we were looking for, these were the metrics you didn't hit. And that is something that I wish more companies did, because one, not only does it tell me like, okay, this was objective, it wasn't subjective, but it also tells me there's a pathway forward for me to get to this, right? Like I can work towards getting more views. I can work towards getting a higher engagement. But if you just tell me, oh, we're focusing on our current partners right now. Okay, but I just saw you partner 2 new people. And so like for me, I would love companies to actually give people a roadmap on how to work with them, because it helps bring down those barriers and gates that they're holding from actually opening up the doors. And for a lot of people in the space, I mean, let's face it, a lot of marginalized folks on Twitter have way higher engagement and interaction than a lot of non-marginalized folks. That's just a reality of things. Work with us even if our vanity numbers aren't small, and allow us to give you our numbers and metrics, and then give us metrics back that you're looking for. Give us something to strive for. And I think that that's something really easy and tangible for partnerships managers to do, because if you tell me why you're not working with me, I'm not going to get offended. I'm just going to know, okay, you know what? I'll see you in 5 months when I hit those metrics. You want 10 million engagement? I will go out and get it for you. And I think that like that can just open up so many doors for people. And yeah.
And it goes both ways. What we were talking about, being explicit and asking us what you want to know from us. You need to share that information with
Exactly.
us. Tell us what we need to know to give you what you need. That there needs to be a more free exchange of information. And, in doing that, go back to the accessible, inclusive methods of communication, and realize that not everybody communicates the same way, So, yeah, well, I think we had an awesome conversation, and I know that I would be thrilled to continue the conversation. If you have questions or want to know more about what any of us do, we're all on Twitter. I know that information is available somewhere. But yeah, this is an amazing event. It's exciting to see so many people from different industries and communities come together and really be able to put these ideas not only all on one stage, but to be able to connect with each other and see all the, I didn't know that I could do that, or I really like to know that person, So I hope that you guys enjoy the rest of the event, and thank you guys for joining me. It's been a pleasure to learn from your amazing work and your communities, and thank you so much.